everybody. This is Stephanie from Baldwin County Homeschool Expo, and we have 4 awesome ladies to talk to us about homeschooling high school. So I've got lots of messages from people interested and nervous about this step. So we've got Devin, Susan, Lisa, and Erin here. I believe all of you ladies have graduated high school students through homeschooling, right?
Yes.
Yep. Awesome. So not sure how, I know this is kind of, we're just going with the flow. So is there anyone that would like to start off and just give us some advice as to how you homeschooled high schoolers? Is it as hard and as intimidating as it looks? And just any pointers that y'all have to share with us. And while everyone's watching, if you guys have any comments or questions, type in your questions and we'll read them off and we'll get to those as soon as we see them. So who wants to start?
Yeah, who do you want to start? Okay.
Okay. Now, I will admit that it is scary because I remember when I started, I was scared to death, but it's actually not as hard as what you think. That's what I think. I don't think it's not as hard. It goes faster than you want. And so try to slow time down. Don't let them grow up too fast. But really, I mean, it is scary, but not as hard. That's my consensus.
Yeah, I'm going to chime in with you, Devin. I started homeschooling actually in high school this summer after my daughter's 8th grade year. I was terrified. So I'm sure that there are other moms in the same shoes that I stood in. And I just can tell you to take a deep breath. You got this. You can do this. It'll all be fine. The one tip that helped me enormously was subjects that I wasn't prepared to teach or subjects that I felt were kind of out of my arena. I took advantage of co-op classes. That helped me enormously. So there's my tip.
That's a great idea. It's amazing how much is available to us.
Especially in Mobile and Baldwin County.
Yeah. And I'll chime in there because right now I'm homeschooling my 3rd high schooler. I have my 3rd senior this year. So, and that's really the biggest piece of advice I would give is to reach out and utilize the resources around you, whether they're co-op classes or dual enrolling your student or doing work study or using, internships. There's so many different resources. So, tons locally where you all are, but then also around the state. So just tons of great resources. So we've done everything from co-op classes to dual enrollment to, again, internships to, there's a lot of awesome resources. So online and then also locally.
So. It wasn't as hard as I thought it was going to be. I remember being scared too, but I will say the best piece of advice that I got that I didn't follow was to keep track of what you were working on and what you were doing. So everyone said, write down the curriculum that you're using, write down the extracurriculars. And I'm like, I won't forget. Oh my goodness. And I didn't even, it was 11th grade that I had to write my first transcript for dual enrollment classes. Because they want a transcript for dual enrollment. So I wasn't even all the way at my senior year graduating a senior. It was just a couple years in, and I was on Facebook scrolling, trying to find pictures to remember what we had done. And you will forget. You will absolutely forget. So you don't have to keep like in-depth records. Like that might sound kind of scary to tell you to keep records, but just somewhere in a notebook, keep track of kind of what you're doing, that, and definitely keep track of volunteer hours. I know a lot of homeschoolers do a lot of volunteering, and I was no, I don't want to keep track of volunteer hours because I want them to do it just to be volunteering, and, I don't want them to be getting something from it. And college is really expensive. And so if you can get, scholarships and things from volunteer work, I mean, they're still going to learn to give and do. So those would be my 2 biggest. Keep track of what you're using and definitely keep track of those volunteer hours. I wish I had.
Mhm.
I know one thing that I have had people ask questions with the state of Alabama, there's no requirements as to what to teach them. So do you have any advice as to someone decide, there's a lot of new homeschoolers, and do they follow their public school? Do they teach something different? Like any advice as to wrapping your head around even just homeschooling a homeschooler and what you need to offer them?
I
I
always
can
tell
answer
them
that.
that they need to have a plan, is what I always
Yeah,
tell them.
and you need to know what your kid's plan is. And for instance, if your kid is planning on going to college and they're planning on going to college in Alabama, so go talk to those schools and ask them what their incoming requirements are. So we did that for my oldest at South, and they might not have required the exact curriculum as Alabama, but they, as far as specific courses, but they required 4 social studies, 4 maths. 2 of them had to be higher than or algebra or higher. So they required 4 years of English. They required so many science classes, one of them with a lab. I mean, but they told us the specifics that they would be looking at to make sure that my son's transcript met those minimum requirements that they had. So a lot of it depends on what your kid's interested in, and then where they're wanting to go to school and what they're wanting to go into, what field, so that they're actually looking at. If they're looking at going into an engineering program, so it may require that they had 4 years of math that were at algebra 2 or higher. You never know. So, but just see talk to schools, talk to your kid, know what your kid wants to do. But then if they are, say, college bound, what are the colleges that they're going to be looking at to make sure that they qualify for the scholarships, for the programs that they're interested in, all of that.
I use something that I tend to send people to, just especially for just a base of, because it's very overwhelming when you start thinking of all of this and what does that look like. Everest Academy, which is an Alabama homeschool cover school. It's a statewide cover school. I think it's alabamahomeschooling.com is their website, but it's if you just look up Everest Academy on Google, it'll pop right up. And over to the right-hand side of the screen, you will see something that says High School Handbook. And you can look at it. It doesn't matter if you're in their cover or not. They'll let you look at it. And it's great. And it actually shows you 3 different levels of diplomas to kind of look at. Again, the state doesn't matter, but this sort of gives you a framework to work within. They also post some really great elective ideas, because that's always a big thing, is what are the electives going to be. So in their handbook, under each one of the different types of diplomas, they post different electives to help give you ideas. So it was a really great resource. It really calmed my nerves when I first started. I was like, I don't even know where to start. And it was just, and then once you've got that framework, then you can go, okay, let me call these colleges, like Lisa said, because that's very important, because some require foreign languages. Some, I know we have big discussions on whether sign language is allowed as a foreign language. So you want to call those colleges, like Lisa said, and make sure that you're meeting their standards. But this sort of gives you the starting framework to go, okay, it's not that complicated. I can definitely do this.
Yeah, and I think parents need to realize that they don't do it alone. Get that support. If you need to, like you're mentioning, Erin, if there's resources out there. I'm a big advocate. I know, and a cover school is not required, but I'm a big advocate for cover schools, because you got someone to go to and ask questions, and you get that support. So just know that you don't have to do this alone, and tap into your resources. Whatever you think those resources are, tap into them, and know that you are not alone, and that if you're nervous and you're not sure what to do, tap into your fellow high school homeschooling moms and resources like cover schools and Facebook groups and things like that.
Erin, we have a question. What was the website again?
It's Everest Academy. I'll tell you what I'll do. I'm going to look it up real quick, and I'll put it in the chat box so that you have access to it. But it's Everest Academy, Alabama Cover School in Google, and it'll pop right up. I think it's alabamahomeschooling.com, I think is the website, but I'm not 100%. I Google it every time. I do it all the time, and I Google it every time. So
I know another thing that a lot of families have expressed to me that they're nervous about is ACT. So, and making sure that their child's ready for it. So, what advice to, if they are college bound, how can you get them prepared to get good scores, and at least for scholarships and for their education?
Can I throw something in real quick on that before we get into the ACT? Because it made me think is we have a lot of focus on whether they're college bound or not, and that's true. I would definitely make sure you are making transcripts or even the most basic college bound transcripts, because a child that's not college bound at 19 may be college bound at 24. Yeah. So you want to make sure that even if you're not having a child that's like, yes, I'm going to college, try and make that even the most basic college, transcript, so that if they decide later on that they want to go to college. I hear a lot of people going, mine's not going, so I'm not worried about it. I'm like, they might change their mind. I didn't go to college until later. So, just that in mind. Anyway,
right.
And transcripts have to be used if they aren't, whether they are or aren't college bound, they may have to use transcripts when they get a job. And you're going to want your transcripts really polished and professional looking. I mean, you guys know me. I could go on and on about record keeping and transcripts. But transcripts, you want them to represent you worked hard to give them this great education. You want your transcripts to reflect that same polished and professional image. So that's something to think about. And, I'm going to go into record keeping and transcripts in the next presentation, but that's something to think about. You do want to have that transcript, and you do want to make sure that it's something that they won't just use this year, but maybe down the road. So, Erin, I'm glad you brought that up, that it's something to think about, whether they're college bound right now or not, or even if they never go, you may have to present that for a job. So just some things to think about.
Yeah, and I think it's very wise to make one, even if you don't think they're going to need it. And start it in 9th grade. Then you don't have to remember everything.
Right.
I'm telling you, I made one last week. Make one in 9th grade.
But the ACT, since I derailed this, let me get it back on track. The Alabama library system actually has a really great free resource that I discovered a little while ago, and I'll put it in the comments of this video once we get done. But you can find it under high school resources on southalabama.com, southalabamahomeschooling.com. We have it under there. It's under the tips and tricks for early enrollment. But it's free, and it's got 4 ACT practice tests that are timed, and as soon as they finish taking it, it spits out what the grade would have been, what the score would have been. They have flashcards, they have vocab lists, they have all kind of really great resources, and it's completely free. So that's really good. Currently, public school high schoolers get free ACTs that we don't get. That is something that we are working to change, but we aren't quite there yet. However, if you make under a certain income, you do qualify for a free ACT. And that is also on that article on southalabamahomeschooling.com is the links and the grids for what you have to make under per family size to get that. When we did it, and I haven't checked it recently, but I think it's still the same. If you qualify for that free ACT, you also qualify for a ACT prep program that is valued at $180. It comes with free ACT help and all kind of stuff from live people. So if you think you might qualify for that free ACT, definitely try for it, because you get it as long as you meet the income requirements. You will have to go to a local high school, and they will have to verify your income taxes from the previous year. They don't have to keep a copy of it. You don't have to give them a copy of it. They just have to kind of glance at it and make sure that you legitimately meet the income requirements. So those are 2 different things that I know of when it comes to taking the ACT is those are resources. Anyway.
Yeah, and the practice tests are really important. Giving your child the chance to practice several times doing those time tests, whether you do them at home or somewhere else, is really important. Because this is for Baldwin County, I don't know if they still offer them anymore or not, but Bayshore used to offer free practice opportunities to for the ACT. And then they also were offering workshops. I think there was a small fee for that, but just something else to check into because we are in Baldwin County. We also use a really great resource. We did Easy Grammar Plus as one of our high school classes along with literature. We blended it kind of together. And through the use of Easy Grammar Plus, my daughter raised her English ACT score by nine points in a year.
Oh, wow.
So there's some really good, curriculums out there that can also help with that too.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things I was going to say that has helped my kids, and this is one of the biggest pieces of advice I've shared over the years, is speed reading. So when they get in there, the ACT.
That's what I was going to say. My friend Lisa told me this, and it does help.
So because it is all time, and even the strongest readers, they're going to, on the English sections and the science sections, there's a lot of reading, and it's boring and it's tedious. And to get through it, to be able to get through those sections, somebody told me, they said, get your son a speed reading test. I mean, was a super strong reader, but after that, he never could get through the sections. So the sections that he didn't answer, that he either guessed on at the end, because you have like 3 seconds left and you start just filling in circles or whatever, he wasn't getting through the thing where he could actually answer all the questions until we did the speed reading. And it shot his score way up, and has done that repeatedly for all of my kids. So speed reading is something, and there's free speed reading courses online. Super helpful for getting through the time test. And then the other thing is, again, getting back to the colleges, know the college, or if they want to go to college. So again, I understand not everyone does, but there are some colleges that will stack the ACT. So that is, if you take it repeatedly, so they'll take the highest math, composite math, or the highest English, or the highest science out of all the tests that you've taken. I know Troy University will do that. So, and they'll give you scholarships based on that. South Alabama won't. They'll just you give them your highest ACT overall for one test. But there are some schools that will stack the ACT. And in that, if you know that your child is actually headed toward one of those schools, then just break it up and say, really, we're going to focus on science. We need to bring that science score up. So you've got a good English, you got a good math, let's bring that science. And they'll focus on that in prepping for the next test, and not worry about the other sections per se. The kid will still have to take all the sections on that test. But I didn't. Some of the colleges and universities stacked ACTs until after we were well into the game. So that was just really good information to know.
Yeah, that's awesome. I know, I think Coastal Alabama also does the prep classes that our kids can sign up for and be able to do some practices and stuff like that here in Baldwin County. So I'm not sure what all colleges, maybe more of them do. I don't know, but I do know, because I've talked with Coastal, that that is something they offer too, that our kids can sign up for.
Several of the libraries,
and
we're doing that too. Daphne Library, Spanish Fort Library. So the libraries were having ACT prep, that were free. So, yeah,
that's awesome.
We just did recently in Alabama Home Educators, we did a thing with HSLDA's high school counselor. And that's a resource that I didn't realize was such a dedicated resource and a good resource for somebody. If you are an HSLDA member and it's not that much to join, really, it's like $11 a month to do it. And especially when you're in high school, it would be a good resource. They have high school counselors. They have people who've done this for years and years. I've been saying for years, wouldn't it be nice if we had a high school counselor to help us do things? Because, man, and they have them. And they have, I think I'm almost certain I saw ACT prep classes with their stuff. And but that's a resource to be checking out, is the high school counselor with HSLDA. Because she came on and did a talk for us and about keeping records and all that kind of stuff. And that's a really neat resource for, not very much when you consider only about $11 a month. So,
yeah, that's awesome. And those of you that are watching live, remember you can comment on the chats and on the comments, and we can get your questions answered while we're live. So, all right. Well, any other tips and tricks off the top of your heads that you ladies would like to share? Those are the two main questions I get
the two big ones. I say just try to relax and enjoy them.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like, it went really fast with Cole, and I regretted later that I did not slow down and relax. Because they're still little, even though they don't seem little, and they still need their mama. So relax. Make sure you throw some fun stuff in there. Don't get so bogged down in getting work done. I mean, the work's important. You need to transfer it, but I mean, try to throw some fun in there. I don't think I threw enough fun into Cole or Juliana, who graduates this year. So I'm trying to correct myself and make sure there's some fun there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, excuse me. I think also Lisa brings up a good point of following what your child's heart is, what their passion is, and we did that with a lot of the classes, but we also did a lot of that with the volunteer service hours. So if you're not incorporating it into your classes, follow their passions into volunteer service hours, because that's a great way to get them exposure to a variety of different career opportunities. So that's something to think about too.
I know we see a lot of people that say my child doesn't know what they want to do. And I think just throwing as much at them as possible. We just threw as much at them as possible. Like, well, let's go here and look at this and see what this is like. And so we did a lot of, and they found their focus within that. By senior year, they really did find their focus. But for the first 3 years, it was just throwing history and science and, neat field trips and volunteer things and all that kind of stuff at them. So, yeah.
And I know, Susan, you're going to talk about record keeping in the next section, so I don't want to really step on that. But one of the things that we did do is we kept a portfolio. I have a portfolio for all of my kids, but one of the things we included in there were all of our field trips. I organized the field trips, and every field trip we went on, I wrote that down, as well as the curriculum and everything. And when it came down to, we've actually had to use those portfolios to submit for scholarships and things like that. It's like, so how did you prepare for this? You want to go into computer science. So, well, we did this field trip and we did this field trip, and I did, but I documented all of our field trips, and people have been so impressed with the field trips the kids have been on, because we call it go schooling. I mean, we don't just homeschool, we go school. We learn by doing. And, even if it wasn't, a lot of times it was jointly with community service hours, but sometimes it wasn't. It was just a regular, fun, educational field trip. And anyway, it kind of just shows some of the coolness of homeschooling and how where the kids, have gotten all of their education, how it's been a village, it's been a community. And so.
Yeah, I agree with that portfolio where you keep a binder of all their certificates and all these great things that they've done. Because the other thing you can do is you can use those field trips, you can use your volunteer service hours and come up with this amazing resume, because so many schools today require a high school resume. And even if your child has never had a job and they are going in for their first job, you can use this information and create this phenomenal resume, even though they have no work experience. So I do really think parents really need to think about however they do their record keeping, however you track your volunteer service hours, whatever method you use, do track them, because they are a gold mine for your child, for scholarships, for, like I said, jobs, resumes, college resumes. Yeah. So great point, Lisa. Yeah. Hold on to that information. It's gold.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
so
one other thing that we did.
No, go ahead.
Sorry. One other thing we did, I know that with one of my sons, by his senior year, he pretty much had completed almost everything. I mean, he had plenty of credits to graduate. He could have graduated early. We did not graduate him early, but he was working part-time. So on his transcript, we put I didn't want it to look like he only took one class that semester, his English that he had to get out of the way. So, but we put that he was in a work study. So he did work study, because, I mean, it shows that they're being active community participants. So they're doing something. So we put on the transcript itself just a section that said work study. So work part-time, whatever it was, but we added that to the transcript. So especially for that semester when all he had was one course to take. So it didn't look like he was just being lazy or not productive. So it was showing that he was a productive member of society still. So.
And that's pretty common in public schools. They do, they definitely, a lot of the senior year, they aren't going to school, full time.
Right.
This wasn't what I was going to say, but I'm going to say it because I wrote that down so I don't forget. But you can also get very creative in the classes that they take, the classes that you do for them. There is, I'm actually friends with a public school teacher who teaches history. And she did a credited class at a public high school in Alabama that was the history of pop music. That was their class, was the history of pop music. So, you can get really creative with what you do and how you do it. They do have some more off the wall classes than you're expecting, and the colleges accept it. So, my cat's talking again. I'm so sorry. This is a new thing we do. Anyway, but what I was going to say about the field trips, Lisa brought up the field trips, and she said, they can be educational, they can be that. I'm going to be doing a talk in a little while on making the field trips educational. But something you can do is don't be afraid to call somebody. Oh, my kids, where we are right now, my son wants to open a sandwich shop. That's where we are. He's 12, and he's decided that when he grows up, he wants to open a sandwich shop. So don't think I'm not going to be on the phone with some local sandwich shop, seeing if they will let him come in one day and see what that's like. I'm going to be calling and seeing and saying, the worst they can tell you is no. That's the worst. They're not going to be ugly. The worst they're going to tell you is no. I've talked to Austell. I've talked to the Airbus here locally. And while they didn't necessarily offer field trips, what I did find out from those phone calls is that they offer high school programs where high schoolers can go in and participate. If you sign up for these programs that they do at the public school, and they welcome homeschoolers too. But again, the right person has to call them, and they have to be able to get the information to the right people who can get it to everybody else. So sometimes just making those phone calls for these field trips for what your child just shows an interest in can lead to even bigger things. But definitely if your child says, oh, I'm interested in, this in the future, plan a field trip there. And see if they might let them get behind the scenes and do something. And so that's definitely a good resource too.
Yeah, I think a lot of parents might be asking, how in the world did your child get through high school early? There's so much to be done. And I want, especially if you're new to homeschooling and you're entering in the high school years, understand that it doesn't have to be an 8 to 5 homeschool day where your kids are grueling over their books. It can, when you're in a public school system or a private school system, keep in mind that some of that time during that school day is used for changing classrooms, taking attendance, and things like that. So you don't have to be glued. If you're not doing something wrong, if you're done with your homeschool day earlier than what a traditional school day might look like. And you might be supplementing it like we talked about with field trips and things like that. And your kids can take more than one science class in a school year if they want to. Maybe that's where their passion is. They can take multiple science classes. And so I kind of wanted to throw that in there because I think so many times, so I started homeschooling brand new in high school, and I was like, my child is sitting at this desk all day long, and it doesn't have to be from 8 a.m. till 5 o'clock at night. Like you are working a full business day. It can look much different than that, and they can accelerate their program. And you can homeschool all year round. And if your child has a weakness in a certain area, you can slow that down too and build the strength instead of moving to the next subject before they grasp that concept. So I just kind of wanted to throw that in there too, because I think, especially for those jumping in right off the bat straight into high school, some things for them to kind of think about. And maybe you guys can want to build on that too.
Now, it kind of goes with what we are talking about just last one with Devin about the littles. Have some fun, and we can learn while our children are learning. And so that goes from the littles all the way up through the high school. It's okay to be a little bit more relaxed and not only just do the educational stuff that they need, the books and stuff, but they need to be productive citizens of society, and they need to be able to live on their own. So don't, a lot of schools took out home ec and that type of stuff, but they need to know that type of stuff so they can survive on their own. They need to know how to do their laundry. They need to know how to cook their family and stuff. So, there's a lot of freedom when it comes to homeschooling too. I got someone just typed in a question. Have any of you done a 5-year high school plan?
I haven't, but I've heard a lot of people have done it. Oh, I'm sorry, Lisa, go ahead.
Well, we did ours, I guess, early, where they started getting high school credits in 8th grade. So like if your child takes algebra in the 8th grade, you can give them a high school credit. So you don't have to wait till they're officially in 9th grade. So I'm not sure if she's talking about maybe that way or just extending high school out for a full 5 years, but which I've known plenty of people that have done that as well. Mm-hmm. So, yeah. We did, I guess you would count it as 5 years if you start giving some high school credits in the 8th grade. So, and then.
Yeah, I've heard several people that they've decided, their kid could graduate after the 4 years, but they just thought, well, let's just add one more year to really help them make sure that they're solid before they go out. And so I think that's where that question is coming in, is adding that extra year in there.
Right.
Yeah, and I've heard of people doing that. I know that Devin and I know she had to leave us for a little bit, but I know that Devin has had some interactions with people that have done a 5-year plan, and it is not uncommon for people to do a 5-year high school plan, not just if your child didn't start early in 8th grade, but truly 9th grade, 10th grade, 11th grade, 12th grade, plus an extension beyond that.
My suggestion for that, though, if you go that route, is there's various types of transcripts. There's transcripts that go 9th grade, 10th grade, 11th grade, 12th grade by the year, and then there's subject-based transcripts. So where it would just simply say English, and then that the 4 Englishes that would be required to graduate or whatever. So, and then math, and then they would list that. So if you go a non-traditional route, I would say to go use a different type of transcript, the best type of transcript for your child and for their future. So whether it be subject, I just feel like if you extend it out, if you're going to do that 5-year or even longer plan, so do a subject transcript as opposed to a grade year transcript. So would be my piece of advice there.
I did want to mention real quick, there is a book called The Brady Bunch, and it is an Alabama family that has graduated 12 kids by the age of 12. And they've all started college at the age of 12. So there's a lot of flexibility. And I'm not saying that that's definitely everything everybody wants to do. And there's a maturity level that sometimes, you may want to definitely factor in when it comes to your kids, whether or not you want to do that. But that's definitely something you can look at, get her book, check it out, and kind of see how they did that. I know we had a graduate this year that she did early enrollment programs at she did it at University of Mobile first, and then she went on to Coastal Community College, and she graduated with a certificate in graphic design. So she can already, as she's graduating high school, she got this certificate in graphic design. And I think, if I remember correctly, she was voted one of the top students in the class, as she wasn't even a freshman yet. She was still a senior in high school. So she's Miss Ellen Lanford. She did that. And so, there's a lot of things that you can do even within that. So she's graduated with a certificate, and she could go get a college, a job right now in graphic design with that. She is continuing on to Troy University, so she is continuing to take that, but she's going into Troy with so many credits. Oh, that's something to check into when it comes to dual enrollment. I actually just had a conversation with the University of South Alabama this week, and they are starting a new dual enrollment program, which looks really neat. But one of the things she mentioned was they do not allow more than 30 hours of dual or early enrollment classes. And one of the things you need to ask when you're talking to those colleges, like Lisa said, call the colleges that you want to go to and look at them, is how many dual enrollment hours you have may affect what scholarships, what monies they can give you when you get in. If you are entering as a sophomore or a junior because you've just taken so many dual enrollment classes, that could affect financial aid going into those colleges. So I know Sal said they limit theirs to 30 hours of previous stuff, but when you're starting your kid in 10th grade, because most of these colleges will start dual and early enrollment in 10th grade, I mean, you could pick up some hours pretty quick. So definitely be calling those colleges and find out exactly what, if you take more than 30 hours, are they still going to allow you the monies for incoming freshmen? So something to keep in mind too.
And I've got two things to add on college and early enrollment. So that I've just learned. So as I've gone around, so my second child is at UAB. And he took some early enrollment classes at Coastal, but he didn't have 12 hours. So when he got to UAB, because we were coming from Baldwin County, he was required his first semester, his freshman year, to live in the dorm. You're required to live in the dorm, and you were required to get the meal plan, which was very, very expensive the first year. So he was on a partial scholarship, but it didn't cover dorm or the meal plan. Had he gone in to UAB as a freshman with 12 hours, early hours or more, he would not have been required to live in the dorm. He could have gotten an apartment and then not have to have the meal plan. We would have saved a ton of money. Wish I'd known that before he had applied. So he would have taken an extra class at Coastal, right? So, or University of Mobile. So learn that the hard way. And I also understand that Auburn, I think, is the same way, and University of Alabama, I think, is also the same way. So just something to keep in mind, something to look into, especially if your kid's going to, want to go off to college somewhere that's not near you. Looking at living. The other thing is, so my son, my third son, who's a high school senior, is now dual enrolled since we're now up in the McCullough area between Tuscaloosa and Birmingham. He's enrolled at the University of Alabama. So, and it's actually a dual enrollment program set up with the school, and our cover school is Devon's Compass Point Academy. So she did all the paperwork for that to take place. And I cannot begin to tell you all how impressed I am with this particular program. So there's a lot of different ones out there. I know that my first son did dual enrollment or early enrollment. It was called early enrollment. He couldn't dual enroll officially, but at South, and they give you, I think, one class free, and then you pay. My second son did early enrollment at Coastal, so which was an affordable option in Baldwin County. So my third son is now doing it's officially dual enrollment, so at the University of Alabama. And there's a lot of things I absolutely love about it. One of them is that as long as your kid maintains a 3.0 GPA, and that's from their high school transcript that you, the parents, create, so they automatically, while they're dual enrolled, get a 50% scholarship. So for all classes that they take, dual enrolled until they graduate. So the cost of the course is on par or even less than it was for them to go to what I paid at Coastal for my second son. So that is huge. So he's already on a 50% scholarship. So the other thing is that the dual enrollment program set up at the University of Alabama for high schoolers is online. So, and in doing that, they register under, they have a counselor, they register under a specific number, so course number for that class. They are only in classes with other high school students. So the instructor knows that I'm teaching this college class for a group of high schoolers. And they work with them because they know that they're still taking high school classes. They know that they're high school students. And I'll tell you what, if there's a deadline or something, you have to go through a UA or college readiness course before you can take any dual enrollment classes. And that was a 2-credit course over the summer that we did. And I think it's offered each semester though. So I like that because if you miss something, if you miss an assignment, it's not optional to not turn in your assignment. So their counselors call and saying, if you want to be in this program, that you have to have this in the next 24 hours. And as of right now, so you're already docked 50%. So on this assignment. So my son like straight away like got on it. So anyway, they don't let them slack. They do stay on top of them, but they do cut them a little. They don't let them slack on assignments and on coursework, but they do relate to them as high schoolers and understand that they're still in high school, that they're taking other courses and they have other commitments, and that they're still preparing for going out into the world. And I've been totally impressed with the level of, well, I mean, at all the schools, we did University of Mobile, South Alabama, Coastal, and now University of Alabama. And I've been, they've all been wonderful. So, but what's different about this one is the scholarship, the half scholarship that's attached to it. So for the tuition rate, and B, the fact that under that specific number that the kids enroll in, they're only in classes with other high school students. So they're not just mixed in with college level kids. So, and they have a guidance counselor they can go talk to if they need to, and things like that. There's some things, some benefits to what they're doing that aren't necessarily available if they just started as a college freshman, so on campus. So
yeah, so I definitely agree with that. I called the article that I referenced earlier, and I'll link it in the comments when we get done, on early enrollment tips and tricks and things. I called many colleges in the state of Alabama, everything down here in South Alabama, and then I called Auburn and Alabama and UAB and Troy and a couple in Mississippi just to kind of see. I was very impressed with Alabama, with UAB, with that one. They were, it was Alabama. Is that the one you're doing, Alabama? Yeah, Alabama. They were on it. They had their own department that you call, because some of the people are like, yeah, it's this much, and it was the wrong price, and it was the wrong information about fees, because they were telling me you had to pay fees and stuff, and I was like, that's not right. That can't be right. And like at Auburn didn't really have theirs as together as Alabama did. But Alabama, I'm an LSU fan, so this is not a football rivalry thing. Let me say that. Alabama was definitely on it. And, being that I'm down in South Alabama, when I made the call, they said 80% of their dual enrollment students are online. So they're not coming in. So they already have it down. So if it's something you're looking at this year and you're watching all the kind of crazy of everybody trying to figure out how to do that, they've already been doing that. So they've got that down. Their people are already going to be on top of that. If you look at the University of Mobile, they are, from what I have found, I hate to say the cheapest, the least expensive option, especially in our area. It's the first class is completely free. Whichever you choose is completely free. And after that, they're only $100 per semester hour. So it's a really great deal. They don't have the online thing as well done as other places, but they do the in person. And if you go to them, call and ask the admissions office for Faith Baker. Faith Baker is in their admissions department, and she was homeschooled. So she knows the ins and outs of the homeschool community already. So it's always really nice to do that. One of my biggest tips when it comes to the dual and early enrollment is if you are calling a college, if you are calling them because you aren't sure what they offer, if they start to tell you things that don't sound quite right, don't sound quite in line with other prices and things that you've heard, ask to talk to somebody else. Ask to talk to somebody who has dealt with homeschoolers. Those two things are really, really important. Like I said, I called Auburn and they were like, yeah, it's $340 a semester hour, and these are the fees. And I'm like, that's a whole lot more than everybody else, and nobody else makes you pay the fees. And that's not right. And so I hung up with them and actually used the chat feature on their website and got somebody else who was like, yeah, no, it's $180 a semester hour and there's no fees. And I was like, okay, that sounds closer to right. So definitely, if it sounds off, hang up and talk to somebody else. Ask if they've talked to homeschoolers. And something else to keep in mind, out-of-state tuition. The South Alabama that I just talked to with their new program that they're doing, they've extended it now, Lisa, just this year, first time they're going to be offering, you can take a whole bunch of classes if you want to, and starting your sophomore year. So it's great. So it's very exciting for us down here. They're doing that. They are allowing, if you're in Mississippi or if you're in Florida or you're in whatever, you can participate. I'm pretty sure if I remember correctly from Alabama and Auburn, if you are out of state, there's an out of state cost for the dual and early enrollment classes. And I'm not sure, I can't remember for Troy, but that's something to check out. So if you're wanting to do something maybe in Mississippi, definitely ask them if they do the out of state tuition, they might. So just that's something to keep in mind too.
And then just another quickie thing about, I know at least Alabama, if the kids are dual enrolled, so they don't have to take the ACT to get, they're automatically accepted into the college without an ACT score. Now the ACT I still think is important because it helps qualify for scholarships and other sources of funding. But if your kid is looking at going at one of the schools and maybe they're, you know, at like University of Alabama and their ACT score is low, if they're doing the dual enrollment program, they don't have to, their entrance is not based on that. They don't have to take the ACT. So if they've done well in their classes, so they're fine.
That's an awesome option. But sorry, my son was distracting me.
That's okay. I'm going to add one more thing that we just found out. Again, like Lisa, there were several things you find out after the fact and after it's super helpful to you. So it wasn't helpful to me, but it was helpful to another family that I know and it could be helpful to you, is that some colleges like Coastal Community College, I had a child that doesn't test well. Testing gives her extreme anxiety, and so ACTs were super, super not great for her. She's very intelligent, but it wasn't translating well into the ACT. And what we found out later is that if you take an early enrollment math or dual enrollment math or English, some colleges like Coastal, for instance, will take that score over an ACT score. So whereas you needed a, you know, whatever 19 on in your math ACT to get to not have to take a remedial math course, which is money at all costs. Once you get to college, nothing's free. So you're basically paying for a class that you don't get any credit for because it's remedial. If we had taken a dual or early enrollment class, which she would have done great in, because she's great in the classes, they will take that grade over the ACT. So if you have a child that maybe gets test anxiety and that kind of thing, have them still take the ACT so you have a score, but they might do a little bit better if they take an early enrollment English 101 math, you know, the beginning math classes and that kind of stuff. So some colleges will accept it over the ACT.
Right. And that actually happened with my son at UA because we went ahead for his senior year and he's taken math, but based on his ACT score, the math that he needed, his ACT score wasn't high enough in math. That was his lowest subject area. And they gave him he had already taken a different course and they were like, well, based on how you're performing in your other classes, they actually gave him a different kind of placement test kind of thing. So it was a placement test, but and it was a lot easier than say an ACT, and it wasn't nearly as intimidating, but it was based on the fact that he had taken these other courses and had done so well. They were like, well, let's just see. And he did fine. So he placed definitely into the course that he needed to go into for math. But if we had only tried to base that on an ACT, it never would have happened. But they'll work with you. You just have to communicate and say, hey, let's, you know, what can we do about this? Or is there something we can do? And that actually didn't even come from me. That came from his counselor. She's like, I would love to see you take this and this and this so that you're prepared for the program that he's wanting to enter. He won't have to do any of the preliminary background courses. He'll have all those out of the way and he can go straight away into the program that he's wanting to take. So into the core courses for that rather than the preparatory courses. So
there's a lot of great information, ladies.
I know, they're good, aren't they?
They are. It's like, wow. I was taking notes too. I was like, okay, I got to remember this, got to remember that. So, but yeah, so thank you so much. And we're running shorter on time just because we've got the next one coming up in a few minutes. But I just wanted to say thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us. And everyone watching, if you do have questions afterwards, type them in. I'll get to the right person so we can get your questions answered. So thank you so much.
Sounds good. Thanks for having us. So
thank you. Have a good one. Bye.